All right. Hey.
Hey, hey, how's it going?
It's going good. Happy Friday. You're wearing black. Is that black? Are you
Uh,
wearing black today?
yes, it's the only
Nice.
color that it hides the pit stains, right? I mean, we're live, people. Sweat
That's true.
happens.
I see you caught on to why I always wear black on the screen. Just kidding.
Now I know. Now I
Awesome.
know the pro secrets.
Yep, that's right. That's right. Awesome. Well, again, into our fourth episode. I can't believe it's already four, which is pretty cool.
Crazy.
Yeah, we're on our way. It'll be even more crazy when we get to episode 100. All right, well, guys, so today we're talking about how to identify what needs to change in your business. I think that, as I know myself as a manager, I've found myself facing certain setbacks or, bumps in the road and not really knowing how to identify exactly what was the cause behind those setbacks. And then also if it was something within me that I needed to change in order to improve the overall functionality of the business and the team itself, or if it was systematically something within the business that needed to change and be adjusted, and then having the team adapt to that change. So either way, there's a lot of facilitation in between that needs to happen, and leadership is a huge component of that. So Jared, I don't know if you want to tune in here and take it away.
Yeah. It's huge, and I mean, just if you think about business, and this is why we do this live, because we want to help leaders be better leaders. And a lot of the clients that Natalia and I work with are small business owners. And if you think about small business, 85% of small businesses fail. They don't make it into their third year. And not all of that is because of poor products or bad market conditions. So much of that is just because the owners of the business just don't do the right things, and they don't do the right things in the right way. And so sometimes some of that correction has to come, from within. Absolutely. And if that's the case, then all of the other things that they try to fix just won't necessarily actually fix the problem. And so, obviously time is short when you've got a small business. You've got to make money, and if you're not bringing in the money, then you're not going to be in business for very long. And so, when we think about business, yes, you can always refine your business and the products and all of that. But if you're not the kind of leader that is going to lead the people in your team, or being willing to be self-reflective and make the changes, then certainly your business is going to really struggle or suffer. And so, as coaches, Natalia and I, we work with leaders to help them get out of their own way sometimes, right, so that they can impact and improve the business. I like to think of us as kind of like mechanics. You go to a mechanic and they fix your engine. It doesn't matter how nice the body of the vehicle is if the engine isn't running. And if you're the owner of your own business, then you're the engine. So, if you need a coach, if you need somebody to get in there and get under the hood a little bit and help you figure things out so that your business can run the way that you want it to, then, definitely recommend doing that. But absolutely. I'm pumped to have our guest today who has been very self-reflective and has already done some of that great work to really be able to impact her business and make those changes. So I'm pumped to have her.
Absolutely. MaKenzie, we are so excited to bring you on and get a greater sense of understanding of what it was that brought you to the sense of self-awareness. So shall I bring her on now?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
Welcome, MaKenzie.
Uh-oh. It says that I can't bring her on because she can't join the broadcast at this time. Why does it say this? Let's try this a different way. Maybe we have to change the direction of our cameras. Of course, this is going on. Welcome to your technological hiccup of the episode.
We do it every week. There's always something. If you missed week one, I was running through the house. You got a good angle of my chin because I had my phone in my hand while I was running around trying to fix the Wi-Fi in my house. So.
Okay, I think we're bringing her on. It says that it's adding her. So we'll see if this actually works.
Perfect.
So perfect example of leadership in practice, right? Sometimes you just got to work through it. And doesn't look like it worked. Okay. Well, this is a bummer.
So
I wonder if how about we change our screens real quick? Can you rotate your phone? Here we go. Nope, not working. Never mind. All right, guys.
So why don't I drop off so we can make room for MaKenzie, and then you guys can have the conversation, and then I will come back on after we let MaKenzie go.
Okay, absolutely. And Jared, let's do this. How about you pop in your questions while you're watching, so that way we can ask her, because I thought you had some really great questions to ask her as well. All right, girl, let's bring you on. Add as a guest. Let's see if this works. Hey, girl. Hi.
Hey.
Oh, man, that's such a bummer that we couldn't do all three of us, but that's okay. So you look great. Good to see you.
You too.
Awesome. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this episode. I think that this is going to offer some huge insights to those business owners and operators, as well as managers out there. And essentially, I mean, again, talking about how to identify what needs to change within your business, and then also knowing if it's something that you need to change personally within yourself, or if it's the business itself that needs to change. Sometimes they even go hand in hand. So, based on your contribution to our conversation last week, I would like to just start from there and ask you, like, how did you identify personally what needed to change? And then what was actually happening before that kind of encouraged that light bulb to go off?
So kind of like the moment, like the light bulb moment,
yeah,
I guess
yeah.
you would say.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, actually something in my business fell backward instead of forward at a pretty pivotal moment.
Mm-hmm.
So it was something that could have been prevented. It was something that I could have, worked through months prior, but I didn't, and I wasn't reflective, and I didn't act proactively.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to be dramatic in saying that it kind of all came crashing down, but it sort of did in a couple different ways. And, like when you are your own business owner, it is tough to kind of feel that and really like move forward from that. So I would say the light bulb moment was first that happening. It was tough, but I have to give credit to my coach and my mentor in our organization, because she's really the person that kind of pushed me to accept how tough and difficult it was, because she made a great point that until you really feel that moment and you really like latch on to how that feels, to kind of feel that failure, you really aren't able to never let that happen again.
Right,
you know what I mean?
right.
To really never let yourself go back there. So I guess my first thing would be that it's super hard as a business owner to let yourself go to that place.
Right.
And yourself reflect on yourself, to say, I didn't do what I could have done. I wasn't my best, like to really like look yourself in the mirror and have that real moment, because I feel like a lot of times the moment, or the reason we can't move past those moments, is we're not willing to be real with ourselves.
Absolutely.
So that was the light bulb. And then from there on, my communication with her had to improve. And that was kind of like number one, was that I wasn't. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, so I wanted to ask you about two things. One, I would love to know if you're comfortable talking about what the crash was, because I think that a lot of times business owners and again, managers don't necessarily know when to pivot, so in other words, like, how big does a problem need to become in order for us to actually say, hey, look, I need to change needs to happen now, as opposed to waiting and waiting and waiting, right?
So again, I think it just comes back to communication. So what I wasn't doing was, our business model was set up to where our team was like, we were at the end of the year, so we were working towards this really big team goal.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody has a place in that, you know what I mean? And as a business owner in the organization, I never want to go backwards, you know what I mean? So at a certain rank or benchmark, you want to always be moving forward, and sometimes that doesn't always happen. We have our hiccups, but I never wanted to go to the place that I went to in that moment. And it just happened to be that it was right at the time that our overall organization was working towards something. Mm-hmm. So my communication lacked in those couple of months, because I wasn't speaking with my leaders to really know where people were, in the sense of where we were working as a team towards our goal.
Got it.
So the leadership lacked in, planning, being proactive, as like, if they're not here to work and they're not here to move forward with us, then continuing to grow others and pour myself into others. And also, that's not saying to write anyone off. That's never the case, but always staying on the same page with the people that you're working with, I think, is just number one when it comes to the people you're leading, and also when it comes to your mentor and your coach, because that was kind of like my other thing was, it's hard to know when to ask for help, you
That's
know?
great. Mm-hmm.
So like letting go of that pride and just saying like, I need help, you know, like I'm not doing well. I've slacked here, I've slacked there. I'm just not sure what to do here. And again, it's that self-reflection moment where you have to say, I'm struggling. And it's hard, I think, for people to kind of get over that moment. And once they do, you know, it opens the door.
Absolutely. So really quick, I just want to say one, thank you to everybody who's watching on. And I'm so excited to bring this conversation to you with MaKenzie, because I think she's going to offer some incredible insights for people who are starting to build, in the process of building both their business and their teams. MaKenzie, would you like to talk a little bit about what it is that you do as well? So that way to kind of give a framework of what you're kind of working within.
Yeah. Do you want me to answer Jared's question really quick?
Sure. Yeah.
The between, because that was kind of like a really big part of it. So it's just knowing your coach's goals and knowing their visions and whether or not those kind of coincide with what you're doing, and paying attention to their work ethic. Like, people tell you, just they show you. It's not about what they tell you, it's about what they show you. So, you know, if you're banking on somebody to be a hard worker and to really hold up their end of the bargain and the puzzle and the organization, yet they're not, because they're just showing you that they're not, you know, you have to just believe that and take what people show you as the truth, rather than kind of like having that naive sense of, I want you to be doing it, I want you to be working hard, but at the end of the day, if they're not, you know, it's, again, it's not that you write them off, you just learn that this is not the person that I'm going to run with towards this goal and this greater vision.
In other words, you guys need to be in alignment. Like, both you and the team
Right.
need to be in alignment with the same goal in mind. Right? Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, you know, sometimes, like you said, it's like, if it looks like a fish and smells like a fish, you know, you kind of just have to accept it for what it is. And I think especially young and new business owners and managers, I know I was there before, where I was constantly trying to work around somebody who wasn't fully bringing it to the table and wasn't fully committed to the team and to the vision. And so I think that you know, from that point, I was giving so much and trying to bring them on board instead of fully being honest with the fact that maybe it just wasn't the right fit, you know. And I think those are hard decisions that sometimes we just don't even know when to make, or we're fearful of making them because we can't really afford to lose somebody either, right? And so we're working from that place of fear.
Right, and kind of switching that to faith. And again, like, I struggled and failed in the sense of I wasn't straightforward with my expectations of people either from the very start.
Okay.
I think that is vital. So, you know, everything comes back to vision and everything comes back to communication. And communicating your vision is important because you, like, I always go back to Steve Jobs. I remember watching that movie when he like yelled at his workers because even though they created an incredible model, it still did not live up to the vision of the company.
Right.
And they wanted to do better, even though they'd worked tirelessly for hours to create something that they were really proud of. They knew that still it didn't match the vision, so they were still willing to put in more work. And it didn't match the expectations, so they were still willing to give more. So I think what I've changed recently is, from the beginning, you know, I'm not telling you like I'll blow you off, but I want to be on the same page with you. I want you to know my expectations, and then you can give me, you know, your expectations, and that's when we know like what steps to take, you know, what trainings to be working in, like what our communication styles need to be, how much time I need to be devoting to you, and things like that.
Right, absolutely. So in other words, you want to make sure that everybody is fully on board, but also on the same page. Like, okay, this is, right, you're joining on fully knowing that this is going to be what's expected. This is the vision. And in other words, not also compromising in order, again, to try and be so accommodating that it gets watered down. Because I think as soon as it starts to get watered down, just like you said with the Steve Jobs example, it's like, you're no longer, the brand itself, it loses sight of the brand, I think, when you allow the vision to be watered down because you're trying to make accommodations, as opposed to just, again, making sure everybody's there for the same purpose in full alignment with the vision.
Yeah, and I think people are more willing or more eager to like step up to the challenge when you instill that expectation from the beginning. You know, not like people what to do and telling people, you know, XYZ, but being like, this is what we're working toward, and I believe that you can do this. Like, you know, I have total belief in you that this is possible. And instead of telling people what to do, kind of instilling that belief in themselves to raise their own standards and to raise their own expectations for themselves, which in turn is going to make them a better leader.
Right.
In the long.
So then going back to kind of recognizing this change, this need to change, how did you identify within yourself where your points of weakness were? In other words, you had mentioned last week that you knew, or you recognized that your leadership style needed to change. So what were the things that you identified were the weaker areas that needed to change? And then also, how did you facilitate that change with the team?
So I think the first thing would definitely be that I was, as the leaders, you know, everything that we're feeling, our energy, our fears, it all floods down to everyone below us. So I was, without even realizing it, because I wasn't projecting my vision clearly, I was fearing that I might scare them or overwhelm them, or, you know, I was putting my own insecurities on my people without, you know, literally telling them I'm afraid of this. I was doing it because it's in my energy. It's in the way I'm speaking to them. It's in the expectations I have for them. So that was kind of the first thing that I had to just get over, like just let go. Like if you want to make a move right now, then you have to release all of that from yourself and just go into this expecting the best by letting go of it. When we're, you know, working from that fear mindset, like you said, we will sometimes get selfish and forget to mentor and forget to pour into our people and do what we can do to make sure, you know, we're succeeding. But instead, when you put your efforts and your heart into your people, into the people that want to show up, things change. So again, like it kind of comes back to like not telling people what to do, or we never told anyone like this is the goal or this is what I want from you because of this. It was more like, I want to help you grow something here. So what are you inspired by?
I love that.
What's your end goal? So then we can create action steps to get you to your end goal. So
I think that's really sorry, go ahead. Please finish. Sorry about that.
Basically just learning, like, not everyone is inspired to take action by the same thing you might be. You might have that same team vision and same team goal in mind, or organizational goal, depending on what your business type is, you know, like if you're working for that organization, I'm sure you want to see it succeed, you know, that's a success too.
Right.
But I might show up and take action for a different reason than somebody else. So taking the time to learn specifically about each person, what it is that's going to inspire them to take action, and then setting goals that will inspire them to work, and then breaking that down for them. So I guess those would be definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually really love all of those points. And actually, Jared just asked a question about how you took ownership in communicating to your team that you didn't originally set up the right expectations. In other words, how did you course correct with them?
Yeah, so that was kind of like scary. I mean, the whole thing's kind of scary, I guess, but it's difficult to be like, hey, it's my fault that, you know, you're not where you are, you're not where you could be because I didn't do a good enough job of setting the expectations, but also learning about what it is that you truly want out of this. Because at the end of the day, like, it doesn't matter if you're a manager, if you're leading a small business, or you're helping someone grow their own business. It always comes down to like that person and what they're going to show up for, you know, like that purpose for them. So I messaged my team, and I was, you know, in different ways, I sort of let them know, you know, like, I feel like I've done you a disservice by first projecting my fears on you, so not being honest with you when I should have been, when you could have been doing better than you were, that you know, I didn't set the expectations from the beginning, and I didn't tell you that this is going to be far harder than you're realizing. Because I think, especially, you know, when business just takes a lot of grit, it takes a lot of hustle, it takes a lot of tough skin, and I never want to bring someone into my organization again that isn't ready for that from the beginning. Like, it's one thing to feel it coming and kind of weather that storm, but it's another thing to be like, oh, I must not be good at this because it's hard, or I must be failing because this is hard. Whereas if they just know that's part of the puzzle, then
absolutely
they're more prepared and they're more willing to work through it, and they know you're on their side.
Absolutely.
You know, because I think when we don't tell people we expect more from them and they can do better. You know, you're doing your people a disservice if you feel like they're not living up to their standard, like who they can really be. Then it's tough to tell someone that, but I feel like they deserve it. You know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think what happens too, I mean, and I'm seeing this kind of culturally, especially within our generation. I'm a millennial. I'm assuming you're also a millennial, but I think, I think sometimes you know, again, there's a lot of responsibility being placed on us that we're not a hardworking generation. Now, I grew up with a great example with my mother being incredibly hardworking, and I feel like I adopted that work ethic from her. And I also started working at a very young age, and so I've always taken so much pride in delivering a really good job to the people. I've always felt like, hey, look, if they're going to pay me for something, I should deliver, right? And I think that most people, I would assume that most people have that same desire to contribute. But I think what happens is that, like you said, there's the expectations or the bars are being set low. And then when people aren't over delivering, people are getting upset. In other words, they aren't, again, accurately communicating what their expectations are and what the type of work that is truly required of their staff and their teams in order to accomplish the mission, right? So let's create a very clear picture for our teams so that they know exactly what they're signing up for from the very beginning. You know, especially like when you think about officers, right, in the military, you don't think anybody's going into the military thinking it's going to be easy. If anything, they've done an incredible job making sure that people know that it's going to be hard, right? So we owe it to our teams, you know, to communicate those same expectations right off the bat so that we're setting them up for success so that they can come fully prepared, knowing what they have to give in order to achieve.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah, that's so great.
People go even higher than what you expect, you know, because I think human nature is you want to do well, you know, and you want somebody to want you to do well. So I think at the end of the day, it's like, don't fear that you telling them that is going to, I guess, like scare them off, but instead like encourage that within your organization.
Right. In other words, when you become, I need to stop saying in other words, when you become a champion, like as the stronger you are as a champion, the more we encourage others to rise into that as well. Jared asked this question: what responses did you see from your team when you made this shift? And you don't have to name names, of course, but if you could just talk about how they responded to this change, and then also how it felt when they responded the way they did.
It felt really exciting to know that it's so crazy the changing in like your wording and your energy with people and like the purpose that you have behind a conversation, you know. I realized that I have to dive into these people, you know, that like it all comes down to pouring yourself into the people. And my coach said to me once, leadership will feel lonely.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think I may have lost you for a second there.
Leadership. Sorry.
There you are. Okay.
I'm back.
Yeah, there you are. Okay. So you said leadership will feel lonely.
Yeah, it will sometimes because, you know, you won't always have that accolade or, you know, like not everyone will notice in the very moment that what you're doing is really setting them up for success. So it's not always going to be an immediate return. You know, there are going to be moments where you're kind of by yourself and you're pouring into people. So it can feel draining, but also very rewarding. So I guess for me, what was the coolest thing was seeing people do something that they never thought was possible, you know, because like I said, our team is really pushing for something major and we kind of rallied together. So there was this whole new atmosphere within every single organization combined that was like, oh, so when we have to show up and we have to work hard for the greater purpose, we do things that we're like shocked by, you know,
right?
Because you have to have that reason to get over those, and that reason, that purpose, that why that we talk about so much, that's going to make you do those really small actions. So my leaders and my team responded really well. And
okay.
And I think, you know, I even learned from not communicating with my mentor to not make the same mistake with my coaches. So something that was happening was I was under the impression after kind of some of this happened that something was going to end up going forward, and it ended up slightly not following through.
Oh, got it.
So we got to the bottom of it through kind of, you know, again, like communication, but I reached out to her and I just simply said, hey, like, if you're ever feeling like you're sinking, you know, do not be afraid to just say, hey, this ended up not working out. What do you think our next option is?
Mm-hmm.
Rather than, you know, because that's what I was doing. I was not being proactive. And I think that's just so important. And my mentor has drilled that into me to be proactive, because you'll be pulling yourself up out of less holes. You
Right.
know, you're not going to hit rock bottom if you're constantly being proactive and listening to your people and watching what they're doing.
Right, right. Absolutely. I think that this also brings up two things. So one is that I think you had mentioned something earlier about business owners and how what I'm getting, at least what's coming through, I think in this message, is that business ownership is really an act of service. You know, you're in a position of leadership as a business owner, you do need to be proactive. You do need to be able to see the bigger picture and then recognize when things fall out of alignment, if people lose sight of the vision, if they disconnect from the mission, if they aren't fully engaged in delivering the way that they were. You have to be kind of aware of all of the subtleties that maybe, instead of just expecting your team to deliver regardless, you know, at all times, you have to be tuned and dialed in, right? And then also being willing to communicate with your team and step in, even if you're not sure how that's going to, you know, turn out in the long run. The other thing is also making sure that as a business owner that you're not isolating yourself by not seeking out help and support. And I think that too often we're not seeing that, you know, within leaders, again, regardless of the position, whether it's in management or ownership, that there's people that you can reach out to, again, working with a coach, working with a mentor, somebody who's going to help you identify what you can't maybe see on your own. Can you talk about how that's been helpful to you?
Just being in more communication.
Yeah, being in more communication. In other words, like knowing when it's time to seek help as well.
Yeah. So I guess, I don't know, like, I think I said this to you yesterday. You were like, we kind of talked about when do we self-reflect, and I feel like it's like every day, you know, like you have to kind of sit down and, like you said, watch for the subtleties. And if you're working towards a goal and you feel like you're on track and you feel like everything's going well, but then maybe you start to notice something, or you're starting to see something in someone, and that, I feel like right before you get off course, you know, all the way, just reach out and be like, so what do you think about this? Or what would your next step be? Or where could we go from here? Or what do you think I need to be focusing on from the outside in? Because like you said, I think we can get too wrapped up in maybe like the problems and not see the solutions that are probably super clear. You know?
Right.
When it's on our back, we might just only be focusing on the negative and on the fear and on the I don't want this to fail, rather than here's how we're going to, you know, help ourselves succeed. So I feel like it's a constant. I know that you can't just constantly be in touch with your mentor, but basically taking that time every day to really look at your business and reflect on yourself and ask yourself if everyone around you is performing the way that, you know, you have set that expectation for. And I had to learn that you just wanting it for someone isn't enough, you know, like kind of that naive moment of like, you really want to see everyone succeed, but at the end of the day, it's up to them. And if it's not their dream to succeed, then that's, again, up to them. So kind of creating that, I guess, like that tough skin, in the sense of like understanding that if they're not showing up, then they're being loud and clear. You know?
Exactly. It's the writing's on the wall, right?
They're not just like pretending or anything. They're distancing themselves in some way. So I'd say as soon as you notice that shift along that path to your goal, course correct before you're trying to pull yourself out of a hole.
Absolutely.
Basically.
I think that answers Jared's question too about like, what advice would you give to others who are struggling in their businesses and might not know the right ways to change? Is there anything that you would want to add to that?
Maybe like what I said to you again yesterday about my mentor and coach. She's my best friend too, so it's kind of
that's great.
Cool. But she told me, you know, one time to ask yourself, if my organization or my team or my coaches did what I did today, would they be successful? So first, you know, check yourself. And if you're not leading from the front, then you have to change what you're doing. And then the next thing, I guess, would be to be open to that, to never, you know, I think Tony Robbins even said one time, he still has a mentor. You know, you're never done growing.
That's
like
right.
whether you're trenches or not, even when things are going great, you should be seeking out help. You should be seeking out mentorship, and you should be seeking out ways to grow, because you're only, I don't want to say you're in prevention mode, but you're in proactive mode by just doing that. You know, you're always being proactive for growing, and you're seeking out that mentorship. I think it's the most important to seek it out, actually, when you feel like things are going so well. Because
right. So see kind of what you're missing.
Yeah, get a curveball at any moment. And if you don't feel ready, you know, to kind of fall from that peak, because we all know, like, there are peaks and there are valleys. So just always being ready for whatever comes your way.
Absolutely. Just that sense of preparedness. And then I think, you know, sometimes we lose sight of, I think as a business owner, no one should know your business better than you. That's the goal, right? So again, to constantly encourage self-reflection, to take bold ownership. I mean, that's the whole idea of being a business owner, is to take bold ownership of your responsibility to creating the business and taking it in the direction that you want it to go, and cultivating the culture and community that's going to help bring that to fruition, as opposed to seeing it as somebody else's responsibility. And I think I've seen this so many times, where we see it as somebody else's responsibility to make our business successful, you know. And that's exactly, like, as soon as that's the mindset you have, where you see yourself as a business owner entitled to success, and other people need to be the ones bringing that success to you, you're going to fall off track, you know. So first things first is to look at yourself and to know your business as best as you can. And then if you're missing things, then to reach out for help, and know that maybe somebody else can guide you and help you course correct. And even before you need that, right, to make sure you're constantly checking in with other people. MaKenzie, you are incredible. It's such an inspiration, such a joy to have had you on. Like, your insights are wonderful. For those of you watching, if you are in the process of building a business, or you've really enjoyed her insights, please reach out to her. I'm sure that she would be happy to answer your questions, or just, you know, be your champion as well. But is there anything else, any last things you want to add before we part?
I just want to say thanks. We talked, you know, yesterday, and we connected strangely on Instagram. I guess not strangely,
right?
But,
yeah.
You know, like, both said how we love that social media is that outlet, you know, and it's a place for. I would have never had this opportunity, because this was just as much of a growth opportunity for me. You know, because I will say that you don't have to be successful to be a leader, you know, like, or you don't have to be at that peak of your success to be a leader.
Absolutely.
You know, you can show up tomorrow and change your leadership. So it means a lot to me to be asked to be here, because I'm still growing, and I'm still building a business and still working towards that vision that I have for my life. So I guess my last little bit would just be to believe that tomorrow you can grow into a leader.
I love that.
You can learn leadership. So
you
don't have to have a label or a certain amount of income or anything like that. You know, you can choose to be a leader tomorrow. So,
girl, you need to write books. Like, you are so incredible. Yeah. Last thing that I would like to ask you, both Jared and I would like to ask you, is there anything that we can do to better support you along your journey?
I guess just like things like this. I love showing up on social media. I love that that's part of my business, to share myself and share my struggles, share my fitness journey, my lifestyle journey, you know, my business journey of mentorship, and really do my best to show people that I'm just a regular person, you know, because like you said, we kind of grew up in a different time. And I feel like I grew up watching people go to work and just clock in, clock out, being totally mentally checked out and just go through the motions. And while we might get a little bit of flack because the millennials don't necessarily work hard, I feel like we're working hard in a different way. And it takes a lot of strength mentally to overcome a lot of the adversity that comes with having a vision and building your dreams, and never letting someone bring you down in the process. So thank you for this. You guys lit me up today. And for anyone watching, like she said, I'm always here, and I'm always open to anything that you're looking at.
MaKenzie is a health and wellness coach, for those of you tuning in. I don't think we got a chance to talk about that, but Yeah.
She wrapped up.
But you can put more if you wanted to put in the comments a little bit more about what you do. I'm sure everybody would love to learn. And again, please, audience, refer to her as a resource. She's just a wealth of wisdom over here. So we'll see you next time, girl. Thank you so much for coming
All
on.
right.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
All right, guys, and we are going to bring Jared back on. And here we go. Hi. Are we there? Can you hear me? There we go.
There we go.
Wow. I am blown away.
That was amazing.
That was just, yeah.
I'm pretty jealous, number one. And number two, I'm pretty sure that I just saw my replacement. Like I think I just somehow kicked myself off the show. We've only been doing 4 episodes. And I think I saw a comment about like a skincare line. I'm like, really? Okay.
That's our next project, Jared.
Well, I think that's probably forthcoming. I mean, holy cow. Nobody's ever offered me skincare lines. We won't say who offered that, Josh. But
yeah, Josh. Anyway, moving on. No.
she was awesome. I mean, I hope that everybody took a lot of notes. She was on fire. Same. I want to point out just a couple things that I don't know. I mean, there's about 6 things that just were awesome. I love that when she talked about it all floods down to those below us. And it really does. I mean, you're a leader, you're in a position where your attitude, the way you view things, whether it's positive or negative, it's going to be communicated to the people around you and below you. And I mean, she was just super positive. She was very positive. She was you could tell that she shows up in a great way for her people. So love that message. Love the message of leading with service, really wanting to help people grow toward their goals. Not to mention the ownership of recognizing, hey, I didn't actually set the expectations the way they needed to be set. So I had to course correct myself, acknowledge that to my team, and then change it. And too often we don't do that. We don't, as leaders, even when we do recognize that we've made a mistake, we don't actually voice that to our people. And so I loved hearing that she was like, hey, I had to come clean. I had to just tell them like, hey, maybe I haven't done this. When
Absolutely.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I wasn't going to say anything.
I was going to say, I've been in leadership for a long time. I've been in leadership roles, senior leaders. I've worked with major companies and leaders in major companies. I have never heard the question, if your team did what you did today, would they be successful? To me, that is like, I mean, anytime, any kind of business, you get in there and you ask yourself, okay, if my team did what I did today, would I be successful? That will course correct every poor manager out there, because they really have to evaluate how much effort did I put in today? And is that what I expect of people around me? That was, man, awesome.
On the money.
Yeah.
I think, along with this, and this I think was a central theme to what she was talking about, is this radical, not only just taking radical ownership, but radical honesty. I think, part of the sense of being self-aware, and I think you had touched on this earlier this week in your interview, is that you first want to assume that you are the problem, and it's because once you can take ownership of that, like I am the problem, then you can also become the solution. And I think we want to be thinking from that perspective of how can I take responsibility for what's going on here, and then thus produce the solution so that way everybody else sees a better outcome, and from that point, then you are truly stepping into what it means to be a leader, both for yourself, for your business, and for your team,
Yeah, for sure. When you see yourself as the problem, then you recognize that you're the solution. And I'm not saying that you paralyze yourself by saying it's all my fault.
No,
but you see yourself as the problem and also the solution. And when you see yourself that way, your mind shifts into I'm looking to fix it. I'm looking for solutions. Because if your people are the problem, if the company culture is the problem, if the organization is the problem, if the CEO is the problem, then you're just going to sit back because that's not on you.
Right.
That's not your fault. That's not something that you have the ability to impact or change. And so we really have to be super mindful of that. And when we're the problem, then we start to get to work being curious about, okay, what can I do? What can I change about myself to impact something else?
Right.
So just awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this is a great opportunity now for us to sort of segue into what we personally thought was contributing to this idea of identifying what needs to change and then knowing if it's you or your business. And I loved kind of what you had said earlier. So if you want to start from that place, I would love to take the conversation there.
So before I get into that, I just want to give a bunch of shout outs because we've just had a ton of people involved. So I just want to say hello to Natalie, who I think is MaKenzie's coach, mentor, aka best friend.
Hi, Natalie.
So welcome. You've done a great job. Nick Harris, as always, awesome. Monica, Mike joined. Brody, I'm not going to get them all. David joined us. Bill joined us. Kenneth, Maggie said, great conversation. Thanks for broadcasting. So just thanks everyone for coming to the table. Hopefully you're learning something about how you can show up as a better leader, whether that be in your business, in your family, maybe in your own life. I mean, MaKenzie's message was one of just personal accountability. So if you're looking to take that up a notch in any area of your life, I mean, give her a call for sure. Give us a call. We're happy to help there. Sorry, what was your original question? Because then I know.
Oh, no. I was just going to ask you where you had mentioned earlier when we were talking about kind of where the perspective that you were taking with this topic. And I think that both of us are sort of taking different perspectives on this, but I loved how you opened it. And I would love for us to kind of go there first because I think that there's a lot to unpack there.
So just in terms of the owners, I think I'm misunderstanding where we're at.
You had mentioned that your topic was more about what's going wrong within the business and how to identify that.
Okay. Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. So I started kind of the show today at 85% of small businesses fail, and it's just not all because of something else. It really starts with the owners. And so getting out of our own way, recognizing the things that we need to change. I think of my own experience. I had a team very early on. And my intention very first was I wanted to build a team of people that were like me, people that I could go hang out with and have fun with. And I did that. We created a team that was awesome. We'd take long lunches. We'd go to movies. We would just have tons of fun. We weren't performing. And so then appraisals would come around, annual reviews would come around, and we would say, hey, you're losing 5%. I've got to take 5% of your income. I've got to give you a decrease. I have to give you a discussion memo or a written warning. And it just, for me, that was kind of the first, is this really what I want to build here? Is this really the culture that I want? Because I wasn't adding value in that way that actually improved people's lives. But like MaKenzie talked about, what are their goals? Help them be successful, really go to work for them. And so I had to start to turn that ship around. And it was hard. But the first indicator for me is that people weren't, let me rephrase it. The first indicator was for me that I realized that my definition of success wasn't the right definition, because my definition of success at that time was, am I having fun at work? Are we hanging out? Are we being buddies? Is everybody getting along? And what should have been my definition of success was, people were able to afford to buy houses or new cars. They were able to actually do things in their own personal lives as a result of their performance internally. And so when I recognized that, I had to make the shift as to, okay, well, what needs to change? And we turned it around. And honestly, I lost some of who I thought were my best people, because
that's what I was going to ask the next question. Mm-hmm.
They had been friends. They loved hanging out. They loved the culture. They loved the environment, but they didn't really love to perform. They didn't really love to put in the work. And I would encourage any business owner, if you feel like, yeah, my people are awesome, they're on board, but you're really not performing, really take stock and ask yourself, are the people who are in with me the best? Or are they really the people who are making the biggest sacrifices, putting up the biggest numbers, really leading by example? Because I think, more often than not, when I work with a team, we end up finding out that people are surprised. Leaders are surprised that the people who they favor on their teams typically aren't actually the top performers. It's the other ones who are sometimes trying to get into that inner circle who end up, being the top performer.
Right. Absolutely. I think that that's actually huge. I've seen that so many times. Especially, I would say a couple years ago, it was evident that this company was actually trying to build that for them, the most important thing, the most important part of their culture was to create an environment that was fun to work in. And so they wanted to create a work environment that seemed like a party. But at the same time, this company depended on sales performance. And they depended on people showing up, taking the sales component seriously, taking the training seriously, taking the quality of the service seriously, right? So in other words, like I've been saying that all day. I got to stop saying that. They were, they really were, they were really in conflict with each other, because the people that were being attracted to this company ultimately weren't the type of people that wanted to perform at that level, as far as wanting to do sales, wanting to even learn how sales can be done, the integrity in which it is required, like deliver in terms of work ethic and be really responsible. Again, were they going to be the type of people that were going to show up in the capacity needed to bring the type of success that the company needed to survive? And so there was just this constant clash of values. And I think that that's what it ultimately comes down to is, are your core values aligned? Does the company know what its core values are? And are those core values going to be the values that lend to the success of the company down the road? If your core value is to create an environment that is fun and that is like a party and just attracts these people who are very lighthearted and maybe don't take things too seriously, then is that really going to contribute to what it is that the company actually wants? If that's what the company wants, then yes, that's great. But if the company wants to make a profit, maybe the core, the values are going to conflict there.
Well, and I think that also speaks to what MaKenzie talked about, of really setting the right expectations, because you can have a fun environment, but you also have to have clarity around what are the expectations of our work and our effort, right? So, and people don't think about culture as being kind of twofold. The one culture is performance-based, where you give rewards based on how well people are doing. The other side, the other stream of culture is related to just, this is the way that our business works. So they're not perks or benefits that happen only when the company performs. They're perks that happen all the time because it's the company. So you have to have kind of both streams. And I saw this, I worked with a team, I was called in to really help boost their culture. It was a time of a lot of ambiguity. Nobody really knew what the company was doing, how the organization was going to change. And we started to think about, okay, well, what do people really want from this job? And they wanted some of the flexibility, they wanted some of the fun. And so we implemented things like, Friday games every Friday at a certain time. We implemented a quarterly barbecue every quarter. They weren't performance-based. They were things that happened, were a part of the culture.
Right.
So those two things also came with, here were the expectations in terms of what we expected in the office, behaviors that we expected in the office. And at that time, it was things like, not surfing the internet, things like not having your headphones in, things that really just, it was a sales type of environment.
Right.
And what we saw was so amazing, because when you set that culture up as a standard, then we saw people at 2:00 on Fridays, when they had the chance to shut it all down and go into a room and get paid to play games, we saw employees saying, hey, you know what? I can't do it this week. I've got too much work to do. We saw them making that right decision. And
That's great.
But it speaks to the expectations that you have to set up. You have to set up the expectations that here are the sacrifices required. Here's what we're going to do from a culture perspective. And now we trust you to actually live within that. And Aaron Wetstein's talked about, talent acquisition, two words that are everything to me. Talent acquisition, you're totally right. You've got to get the right people in the door. Right. But there's also something to be said about, once they're in the door, what they experience has to match what we sold them on the coming in. Right. And not all people who come in and don't perform are people who were bad hires. People who come in and who perform are given the right tools. They've got clear expectations. They're taught and developed in a way that helps them actually ramp up their performance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's important at that point to, again, you want to know who it is that who your ideal employee or team member is going to be, right? But you can't know that until you yourself know what your expectations are of your business and also of
Yeah.
yourself. You know, so you need, I think there's, you know, those are the two main components here, is knowing both what you want and expect of the business, and then also what you expect of yourself in the business. And then from there, you'll be able to know exactly who you want to bring in. And then again, construct the culture around that to support it. And then also support and promote the growth and success of everybody involved. You know, so you really have to have that bird's eye view. And I think that it's really important that if you don't do that, I think what happens is that that's where we start assuming that it's somebody else's fault that things aren't happening the way that we want them to. And like, again, MaKenzie did a great example of sharing how ultimately she took ownership of the fact that she wasn't sending the right message. She wasn't setting the expectations. And then if she wasn't communicating in a way where people were fully on board. And that being said, as far as like my point, I know we're 9 minutes away from time here, but the viewpoint that I took with all of this is that I think that there's really three parts as a business owner, operator, or manager that you constantly need to be aware of when you're navigating your business and trying to develop it. And those three parts are going to be your people, your systems, and your responsibility. And so you need to have a constant awareness and also monitor these three things constantly. So your people, you need to be understanding or aware of what their strengths are and what their weaknesses are, always, at all times. So again, I said this to MaKenzie when she was on, but nobody should know your business better than you. No, your manager should not know your business better than you. Your team should not know your business better than you. You need to take the ultimate responsibility to make sure you know the ins and outs of what's happening within your business, what's happening within your teams, and know what's going on with your people. And so when I was managing myself with the team, like I was paying so much attention to where I could utilize their strengths within the business, and then also where there was room for development. And then again, taking responsibility myself for developing their weaknesses, you know, the areas in which they weren't performing. The other thing is knowing your systems. And I think sometimes, again, we assume that maybe the problem is an individual, and maybe the problem is inherent within the systems that we've created. And so if you are in a position to either change the systems or manipulate the systems, or you can speak to somebody else who has that authority, then it's important to know what parts of the system aren't working or enabling success for you, the business, and the team. And so a perfect example of this, I would say, is knowing when scheduling, I think, is a big issue when you're working with teams who work, you know, it's different shifts or who come in at different times throughout the day, knowing when your peak business hours are. And if you're bringing in certain people at certain times and it's not working, is it the shift that needs to change, or is it the people on the shift that need to change? You know, do you need to navigate, you know, different personalities, you know, and then also knowing how your business is performing and the type of people that you need on during certain times during business hours. So I think, you know, again, knowing how to navigate both the system and change the system so that it's empowering to the team and to the business. And the third component of that is knowing what your responsibilities are at all times. So I think, you know, again, it's easy when you're in a leadership position to either become entitled or to have a certain attitude that you think you're doing enough. And I think we've said this several times, that if anything, when you become a leader, you have more work to do. And you have to really, again, the mindset that you have is one of service. How can I be of greater service to those around me, to my position, to the business, to the people that I'm hoping to serve through the business? And so from that point, knowing, like MaKenzie said, like checking in with yourself. If my team were performing exactly the way I perform today, would they be successful? You know, and you have to be able to self-check and self-regulate, and then also know for yourself, what are your own strengths and weaknesses? Where do you need to grow? Where do you need to start showing up more? You know, and again, taking really bold ownership of that, and making sure you don't lose sight of your contribution. If anything, it is the greatest contribution to the bigger picture.
Yeah, amen. And Anthony said, great people in a bad process produce poor results. And you're totally right. So I love the questions that are being surfaced here. So if you're a business owner, you're wondering, you know, how do I evaluate things? Great questions that we've heard today are, you know, around your people. Certainly, if they spent their day the way that I spent my day, would we be successful? That's a great first question for you to retool your own day to be able to impact your others. Asking about the system. Where are the breakdowns in our system? what could be improved to make it more efficient, more effective? Asking those questions about your system, even if you already feel like your system is a great system, just ask yourself. That will get your motor running a little bit and start thinking, okay, where can I make some improvements? Asking all sorts of questions about your people, I think is also just very, very important. So good questions. Hopefully you're writing them all down.
Yeah, and actually I have three questions as far as your people and your team that I think are excellent. It's from the book, What Your CEO Wants You to Know, and by Ram Charan. But these three questions were great. So one is, what are the 2 to 3 things that you would call that would call the individual's natural talents and drive? So you want to know what this person is going to thrive, the areas in which they're going to thrive, knowing that. And then also, what's the one major blind spot that this person has that might prevent him or her from growing further? I think that's huge. Knowing where the blind spots are within the talent, within the team, and then again, even knowing where the blind spots are within the systems. Those are 2 things that you want to be aware of. And then the third one is, how can you help coach this person? So always being mindful of your position as a leader and as a mentor to help them cultivate the skills and the talent needed to be successful in their positions, seeing yourself as being responsible for that 100% of the time, developing your team all the time and knowing that it is your responsibility.
Yeah, totally. So. Great questions. I mean, curiosity is the way to improvement. So be asking yourself questions for sure. I know we're right at time. Thank you everybody for joining this 4th episode. You might never see me on it again because MaKenzie was so great. So we're gonna this might be my farewell. Right. It's just gonna be MaKenzie's show. But you guys are awesome. If you guys want to work with Natalia or myself, on a closer level, then definitely reach out to us, send us a message. We work with teams, we work with individuals, we work with executives. So we're happy to support you in any way that we can. Come with your questions. We'll be here back next Friday on another Leadership Live. Talk soon, everyone.
All right. Absolutely. Happy Friday. Bye.